The Eagles' bye week comes way too soon, as a dispatch of Dallas has the Birds sitting at a lofty 6-0. The NFC is going sideways, as Kirk Cousins and Daniel Jones sit at 5-1, while some Hall of Famers are down at 3-3. Tony Cutillo on some lousy fantasy quarterbacking. Sean Green has your Week 7 props. And how about that Big Blue? It's all right now on This Week in Pro Football.
It's time for This Week in Pro Football. A deep dive into the key issues and marquee matchups in the National Football League. For the next 60 minutes, we invite you to sit back or lean in with host Pat Callahan as we preview the week's Eagles matchup, big games, breaking stories, and all news NFL. It's This Week in Pro Football, right now on JAKIB Media Sports.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to week number 7. This week in Pro Football, the National Football League. Pat Callahan joining you here on JAKIB Sports as we prepare ourselves for what is already the 7th week of the NFL season as it rumbles by. And what have we learned so far? What did we learn in week 6? Well, we learned plenty. First off, that the Eagles are, of course, the real deal. At 6-0, they, as I said, they dispatched Dallas. And the Philadelphia Eagles right now are clearly the best team in the NFC. Just one thing that keeps nagging at me with that team, but you can't argue with the results. Philadelphia now sits a game ahead of those shocking New York Giants. We're going to spend a few minutes this hour talking about the Giants and the resurgence of that team. But for now, Philadelphia. And as my good friend Sal Powell was kind enough to send me here, the Eagles are led by a 24-year-old quarterback who has now won 9 straight games, that, of course, being Jalen Hurts. The Eagles are also doing with a very balanced offense. 395 yards per game, which is 3rd, and 27 points per game, which is 4th. So the Eagles are doing it with a great deal of balance, a heavy emphasis on the run, which is a great way to win football games, but just that nagging thing that, as Mike Sirianni pointed out in his Monday press conference, the Eagles in every game this season have had a 2-touchdown lead, or a 2-digit lead, I should say. And in too many of the games, it gets close. It gets close in the end because the Eagles, I think, still have that tendency to take their foot off the gas. So if that's happening and they get later in the season, then things could get dicey for Philadelphia. But the schedule just doesn't seem to indicate it. I'm going to talk with Sean Green later in terms of a prop about how many games for the rest of the season. As of right now, the Eagles are, in fact, not favored. I don't know if we're going to find one. I don't think we are. Xander, if we can bring up, though, that what the hell is going on out there from last week and what have we learned? Well, as I said, the Eagles sitting at 6-0. Everybody knows that story here in Philadelphia after a good, solid win over the Cowboys. Cowboys came back a little bit. But still, the Eagles look good and dispatched Dallas. Quarterbacks are coming and going in the National Football League, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, some notable quarterbacks coming back. Tua Tagovailoa is coming back from a terrible concussion, but he's cleared to play this week for the Dolphins in a Sunday nighter against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Matt Jones apparently is going to give it a go Monday night. Would you believe the Chicago Bears are on national TV again? I mean, Chicago and Denver have just been national TV poison, and here the Bears are back again. But Mac Jones, who I think wants to get Bailey Zappi out of his way, Jones eager to get back in there for the Patriots. Dak Prescott returns for Dallas. Dallas plays Detroit, an early game Sunday. I think Dallas is going to dispatch the Lions, who are a feisty team. But the Cowboys still a team to be reckoned with in the NFC, certainly. And Carson Wentz is going. Wentz is now out for 4 weeks, a finger injury. Carson Wentz is just, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Carson, so much promise and nothing but heartache ever since. Some notable Week 6 upsets in the league last week, led by Atlanta beating San Francisco's Falcons. I use the term feisty with Detroit. The Falcons, playing very good football, have managed to get to 3-3, and God bless Atlanta. Not a lot of talent down there. This was clearly supposed to be a tank year, but the players didn't get the memo, and the Falcons are playing hard. The New York Jets go defeat the Green Bay Packers. Boy, Green Bay is really on its heels right now. But how about those Jets sitting at 4-2? The New York Football Jets, just a game behind Buffalo. So the Jets have responded now to Robert Saleh. They're playing good, solid defensive football too. The Giants, as I will talk about later on, Pat Leonard is going to join us from the New York Daily News. Looking forward to that in just a few minutes. Talk about those 5-1 New York Giants after beating the Ravens in New York last week. The Giants playing far, far beyond expectations. It'd be good to get a read from Pat Leonard as to whether or not, how realistic that really is. Are the Giants a real deal, or are they just another symbol of a very weakened NFC? And Pittsburgh rises from the dust and beats Tampa Bay. Buccaneers cost a lot of people their survivor pools Sunday, and as they were beaten by Pittsburgh last week, and rather decisively. So good for the Steelers rallying, keeping themselves somewhat relevant. As I mentioned in the open, the NFC is off its orbit right now with teams that you thought were going to be really good. Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Los Angeles are really struggling. Even San Francisco now losing to go 3-3. All those teams I just mentioned are 3-3, while the New York Giants sit at 5-1, and the completely anonymous Minnesota Vikings are 5-1. What do we know about Minnesota? Well, we're going to have to find out. Maybe we have to start taking our eye off the Green Bays and the Los Angeleses and the Tampa Bays. Start looking at these second-tier teams that are playing good football. And the other thing I wanted to mention before we get to a break here is the owners' meetings. The owners' meetings took place this week. I'm not quite sure where. I'm sure they were in some rough and tumble locale like the owners usually meet in. But just a few notable things happened at those meetings. Troy Vincent made a comment, of course, about the roughing the passer, and there were a couple other episodes this week. I said last week that it's a 10% of teapot, only 24 such penalties so far this year, but they're just so notable. And usually the bad calls happen when a play or tackle is made that shouldn't have been called, as opposed to the opposite. But Vincent was adamant. They're protecting the quarterbacks. There's a belief among the owners that the quarterbacks are the reason why they get the great ratings, and they're going to protect them. Big fight this week between Robert Kraft of the Patriots and Jerry Jones over opening up another contract renegotiation for Roger Goodell. Now, listen, many of you are out there trying to make a living on $44 million a year. We all know it's tough to do, especially in this high inflationary age. $44 million doesn't get where it used to get. But they're going to open up. They're going to see if they can accommodate Roger a little more. The vote was 31-1 to open that up for renegotiation. What are they going to pay this guy? It's unbelievable. But anyway, Goodell he's got their ear. That's it. They think Roger's the man because he makes money for those owners, and that's all. Jerry Jones does not like him, stemming back from the Ezekiel Elliott suspension incident from a few years ago. Just a quick look, Xander, if we might, at the standings before we get to a break here. I talked about this just a few minutes ago. Let's look at the AFC. Buffalo sitting at 5-1. Look at those Jets, 4-2. The North is pedestrian right now. The Ravens can't hold the lead, and sit it now at 3-3 after losing again to New York. Bengals starting to wake up a little bit. The AFC South doesn't matter, I'm afraid. Kansas City sitting at 4-2. They're still the team to beat in that AFC West, even though they lost to Buffalo last week. Bills are still, as I said in the preseason, by far the toughest out in the league. Buffalo's points for and points against. No one's even close to them. The Bills have scored 176 points and given up 81. In the NFC, Philadelphia rules the roost right now. Minnesota, as I said, 5-1, a 2-game lead already in the NFC North. We'll see if Kirk coughs that up, if the Packers are able to get themselves together. Tampa Bay, a very disappointing 3-3. I mentioned a few weeks ago, is Tommy Brady's heart really in it? I think that question is still on the table. And the NFC West is a year removed from being the most competitive or toughest division of football. Is now just 4 teams that just can't get it going. But listen, we get back, we're going to talk some NFC East football. We're going to be talking with Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News, who's an old Northeast Philly guy. So we'll get his take on both the resurgence in New York football and his take on the 6-0 Philadelphia Eagles when we get back on This Week in Pro Football.
First Bank is a true community bank with offices located throughout eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Being a First Bank customer comes with access to personal bankers, ones who know you and your business almost as well as you do. Joe Calabro is a regional president of First Bank and has been a leader and a lender in the southeastern Pennsylvania market for over 30 years. Call their Westchester office, 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at ugies.com.
Cantor Novak Beaver and Pike is a full-service CPA firm with offices in PA and New Jersey, offering first-rate accounting, audit, and tax services. They focus on helping clients achieve their business and financial goals, from startup operation to long-term financial planning. For more information, call Terry Cantor or Dan Pike at 215-550-2954 or on the web at cnbpcpas.com.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodrigo's Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
Welcome back to This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan joining you here on JAKIB Sports as we ponder week number 7 in the National Football League. And joining me to do so and talk about the NFC East, and that would be Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News, who's been the Giants beat writer since 2016. Pat, how you doing?
Doing great, Pat. A lot to talk about. Finally covering some winning football in the NFC.
I know. I've talked with Gary Myers a number of times. I'm sure you've met Gary a number of times. Gary's a regular here on the show, and he talks about the sorry state of New York football. But I know with baseball going on, the Mets a big disappointment, obviously, but the Yankees now down to Houston. But still, is football elbowing its way to the top of the sport food chain in New York?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Gary's a mentor of mine, obviously from the Daily News, and he could tell you as well as anybody. But the fact is, baseball almost in recent years stays relevant deeper than football does. Right. Football season starting in September, and really by Thanksgiving, a lot of these years in the New York area, it's done for. Yeah,
that's true, but not this year.
Not this
year.
And
so this is what I want to start with you on is how it's talking about the Giants now. I want to focus on them because they're with the Eagles here in the NFC East.
Yeah.
How have the Giants exceeded expectations by such a wide margin? Meaning, what was missed by most people, including me, with this football team back in August?
Yeah, myself included. I think it's the coaching, Pat. I mean, they're outscoring their opponents 87-49 in the second half of games so far. And I think that can be directly attributed to their mid-game adjustments from Brian Daboll, the head coach, Mike Kafka, the offensive coordinator, former Eagles quarterback, came from Kansas City under Andy Reid, and then Wink Martindale, Don Martindale, the former Ravens defensive coordinator. So they're aggressive on defense. They're aggressive as play callers, but they're also very smart about getting out of what's not working and getting into creative plays, keeping defenses honest and on their toes. And they're not blowing people out of the building, obviously, but they're staying in games, I think, because they're making the most of what they have.
Well, all right, let's talk about the most of what they have then. Pat, because, and I'm going to frame this question in, I guess, my usual glass half empty way, and that is Daniel Jones. I talked with Gary about, is Jones a true, where is he in the pantheon of NFC quarterbacks? And my question to you is, are the Giants winning despite Daniel Jones, or are they winning alongside Daniel Jones, or are they possibly winning because of Daniel Jones?
They've won because of Daniel Jones. Now, the defense is the reason they're 5-1. Defense, Saquon Barkley. But Daniel Jones has been a part of it as well, especially his legs. Now, that's not the same recently because he hurt his ankle, high ankle sprain. He's been dealing with that, so he's been a little bit less mobile. But, I mean, Saquon Barkley went out of the game in the second half against the Green Bay Packers in London. I was there at Tottenham Stadium. And Daniel Jones directs a 15-play, 91-yard drive, ends with a 2-yard run by a backup third-string running back, Gary Brightwell. And so even you see Saquon leave, Jones still getting it done. I think the coaching staff is being strategic about putting Jones in situations and play calls that succeed, and also with a lot of motion and a lot of options for him, whether it's running or otherwise. They're giving him a lot of decisions that keep the defense second-guessing, and then also they're asking him to make quick reads. I think it's an offense that's conducive to smart and simple plays.
Right.
And Jones also said he thinks he's speeding it up mentally, and that's why really he has not turned the ball over at the clip that he was prior to this year. He has 4 turnovers, but one of them was an end of half, like Hail Mary attempt this past week. Largely, he's taking care of the ball.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, he has fewer passing yards in 6 games than Tua Tagovailoa has in 3.5 for the Dolphins. So it's not like he's lighting the world on fire. That's for sure, as your question intimates. But he's doing his part. It makes the evaluation extremely interesting that he is winning games, not blowing anyone out of the water, but looking solid as well.
But I guess it's not fair to lay to I don't want to say cast aspersions but really to hold back any credit to Jones, because you compare Philadelphia to New York, Pat, and Philadelphia trots out every play. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert. I mean, a real solid top tier receiving core. The receiving core of the New York Giants, it's unbelievable. They can't keep anybody healthy. And then they got a guy like Kenny Galladay. He can't stay healthy either, but there's a real question as to whether he wants to even be in New York. So I guess you have to give Jones somewhat the benefit of the doubt because he has nobody to throw to.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's why it means that much more when he's winning. But conversely, to your point, whatever's on the field is what you have to evaluate him with, right? And so that's what's going on right now. It is an interesting debate. You know, they have a franchise tag to use. Do you use it on Daniel Jones? Do you use it on Saquon Barkley? And if you're Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, even if you see him winning games, you have to look at him, look at all the quarterbacks in the coming draft, Tyrod Taylor, your backup, and you have to say, has he reached his ceiling, or can he keep going? And can we win, as you pointed out, can we win because he's throwing for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns and not just because he's managing a safe, conservative approach?
Is this the year, Pat, that the Giants have to make a decision on Jones as to whether to extend him?
Yeah. I mean, yes, this is the year. They could there's a world, Pat, where they could franchise him. And if they look at this draft and they say, well, we've complicated this because now we're picking, let's say 18th instead of top 5. Right. So even the 1 or 2 quarterbacks we like, they're not there. There's a world where they could franchise tag him and drag it out another year. Yeah. But that was not I think the plan coming in was, well, we'll give him a shot, but it's looking like we're drafting our guy next year. So winning in a weird way gums up the works. I know, but I tell you, let it gum it up. Let it gum it up. It's great for New York. Let me segue for just a second. You mentioned you were at Tottenham Stadium for that game. Tell me what it's like. I've been a big critic of the NFL insisting on going to London. I think it's ridiculous that the Packers of all teams lose a home game have to go to London. What's the atmosphere there? I mean, is there a possibility the league could actually get a foothold in England? It's a great question. There's the good and the bad, right? So first of all, the atmosphere, I mean, it was as loud and as big of an event as really it felt like a playoff game, a Super Bowl, an all-star game. It just had that kind of feel. Yeah. Obviously the novelty of it for the fans over there. lot of Germans actually come all the way to London and England for these games too. I mean, it was 85% Packers fans in the stadium. It was nuts.
That? Yeah. About that.
You know, the negative side, it's interesting. You know, everybody talks about turf being an issue. They have this phenomenal system of moving the grass pitch out to keep it safe for their soccer team. And then they wheel it out on railroad tracks essentially, and they have turf underneath that they patch up. Players didn't really love it, you know, but listen, I think I heard Roger Goodell say over there that they would even entertain the idea of having a European division so that those teams could not have to travel overseas as much. I don't know if that's realistic. The fans are there. I will say that. The fans are there.
All right. Because I always thought, what are they trying to do here? But it sounds like it's plausible, and God forbid if it's another source of revenue, they're going to do it. that league. But
you got
let me get Pat Leonard here from the New York Daily News. Let me get a take from you now. I want you to cast your eyes south here and give me a New Yorker's take. Even though I want to point out to everybody, Pat's an old Northeast Philly boy, born and raised in Fox Chase, right?
That's right. Born at Abington Hospital, raised in Fox Chase, right across from Burholm Park.
Nice job. Nice job. Good to have you. I was the same way, close to it anyway. So, all right. But give me a New Yorker's take, if I can brand you as such now, on the Eagles. What are the New York fans, what are the Giants themselves when they take a look at Philadelphia? Are they thinking that's a very, very solid team out down there?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I told you about how the Giants' advantage has been their coaching, obviously the backhanded compliment there as well. The roster isn't very good. And the Giants and everybody else up here looks at the Eagles. And even though there's no love lost between the franchises, you can see the difference in the roster. I mean, you know, I think honestly, as much as Howie Roseman has had swings and misses and like any GM has in a draft, I honestly think he's one of the best GMs in the league. And I think it starts with, and I think the respect is there from everywhere, including from the Giants. And I think it starts with the fact that their lines are always that good, and they're deep and they're talented and they push people around. And by the fourth quarter, you're just tired of playing them. Up here with the Giants, obviously, there's some, you know, I think with fans, a little bit of sour grapes of watching James Bradbury flourish, just as he did here in his first year.
I know that's true. And that's a good word, too, to describe it. But, you know, these two teams do not meet until December 11th. A quirk in that scheduling now has them playing twice in like the last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
But I look at that Giants schedule. I'm telling you, I see at Jacksonville. And how about the fact they're a 3-point dog? 5-1 New York goes to 2-4 Jacksonville. They're a 3-point dog. That's what they're not getting any respect. They're not.
Absolutely.
And I don't know. Are they using that as a chip on their shoulder?
They know it and they like it. I think part of the reason is that Saquon Barkley's right shoulder is not right. And Saquon, I talked to him about it, you know, this week, and he said, oh, no, listen, I don't think it's terribly serious. I'm just kind of managing pain. But I'm wondering if people, you know, the odds makers, people are looking at that last game against the Ravens where his shoulder's hanging and he's avoiding contact on some of the final plays, and wondering what this game could look like if 26 isn't as healthy as he's pretending to be.
Oh, boy.
So that could be it.
My fantasy guy in 2 leagues. I can't tell you how thrilled I was when he did the right thing and sat down at the 2-yard line. But what are you going to do? But after Jacksonville, they're at Seattle. That's winnable. Then a bye. Then Houston, Detroit at home. The Giants, you know, the schedule certainly is there for them to have a gaudy-looking record by the time they go to Dallas on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, the schedule profiles as they look like it's crazy. It's only 6 weeks in, but the word playoffs is not crazy to discuss when you bring in the idea of their schedule's favorable. And like you said, at the end of the schedule is awaiting these division games, which obviously could do them in, but also presents an opportunity to make up a lot of ground as well. The big point, too, about their upcoming schedule, not only are those teams beatable, Pat, but they also, outside of Jacksonville, they all have bad rushing defenses. Like the Seahawks and the Lions and the Texans. Those are all teams that have been run against. So even if Barkley's banged up, I mean, what the Giants do best on offense right now is run the ball.
Well, I hope things look promising in New York. We'll have to see if they can proceed, at least get through these games, and then, like you said, when the division games start, we'll see if they can firm it up. But things looking good there for New York. And Pat Leonard, I appreciate you joining me very much for this little segment here, filling in for Sal Powell. Thanks very much. And we'll be talking to you again, because as this thing comes up, I certainly would like to have you back as we approach that first Giant game. Hopefully the Giants stay healthy. It'll be a good game in Philadelphia. I think, is that where they play first? I don't know if it's Philly or New York, but 2 good games coming up late in the season. I hope you'll join us. All right.
Oh, I can't wait, Pat. And I would love to come back. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Pat. Thanks very much. Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News joining me. The other thing, of course, helping the Giants is so many teams in the NFC playing lousy right now at 3-3. The Giants' schedule looks all the more gaudy. Xander, before we get to this break, let me throw out my trivia question here, sponsored by the great folks at Kennedy Ford. Nobody answered my question last week, which was to name me the 3 most common NFL penalties, the ones that were called the most in 2021. The answer was offensive holding was first. False start was second. Defensive pass interference was third. Are you surprised at that answer? How about this week's question, which is, I think, pretty simple too. The Associated Press has been awarding the NFL's Most Valuable Player Award since the 50s. And the question is simple. Name me the team, the franchise that has had the most MVPs over that span. Which team has had the most official Associated Press NFL MVPs since the award started in the 50s? You can tweet me at TWIPF Pat with that answer. You can tweet the station at JAKIB Sports. Send me that tweet. We'll send you a fabulous This Week in Pro Football t-shirt, not available in stores. And please stay with us, because coming on the other side, I got my arch nemesis, Tony Cutillo, the Jigsaw, to talk about some fantasy football and some bad fantasy quarterbacks coming up on This Week in Pro Football.
I grew up in a home, and I wanted my kids to have that. The process of buying a home seemed so daunting, but Christine and M&T believed in me. Everyone took an interest and helped me through the process. You don't get this kind of service everywhere. I closed on the house and I didn't tell the kids. They were like, oh, you got the key? You closed on the home? They were so happy. M&T Bank made this dream come true for me and my girls.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting, with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at UGIES.com.
At Whistler Pearlstein LLP, we assemble the most effective team to handle all of your legal needs. There are players and pretenders, but our hustle and heart set us apart. In practice now for over 75 years, we're proud to be one of the most prominent full-service law firms in the Philadelphia region. We offer 17 different areas of practice, including business, corporate, and tax education law, real estate, zoning, and land development, municipal law, and litigation. Our top-rated attorneys and staff are laser-focused on client success. We strive to provide outstanding legal counsel with the highest level of care and consideration. Let us show you the Whistler way. Learn more at WhistlerPearlstein.com or email Michael J. O'Donohue at mod@WhisPearl.com. WhistlerPearlstein.com or mod@WhisPearl.com.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles!
It was late at night. I was browsing KennedyAuto.com when there was a knock at my door.
Hey, baby, what you doing?
Buying a car from John Kennedy Ford.
Online?
I let her in on the secret. KennedyAuto.com makes car buying easy. That got her attention.
Can I go for a ride?
Let me get my coat. KennedyAuto.com. Enjoy your ride.
Welcome back this week in pro football. Pat Callahan joining you on JAKIB Sports, week number 7, the National Football League. Thanks to Pat Leonard for joining me, talking some New York Giants and some NFC East football. Now let's segue to the jigsaw himself, my arch nemesis, my implacable enemy. That would be Tony Cutillo from Win Daily Sports and Sirius XM. Tony, how you doing?
Oh, I'm great, Pat. How you doing, buddy?
How you doing, man?
I was thinking of you. As soon as Saquon slid at that end, I was like, oh, Pat's probably – I was waiting for my phone to go off.
Well, never mind your phone going off. My phone almost went right off through my front porch window. But he did the right thing. But, boy, that's always tough to see. Just get the hell in the end zone. But – you know, what are you going to do? He did the right thing. Game was over. I just had Pat Leonard on, Tony, from the New York Daily News. He gave me some – I didn't like hearing it. He said to me there's something wrong with his shoulder. And
I don't like that either.
Sound good.
He's my guy, too. We're in the same boat here.
Yeah. Well, I don't like hearing that because they got some favorable matchups coming up, and it sounds like they're going to baby him a little bit. That's unfortunate. I don't like – how does he do this? He always comes up with these injuries, even when he's playing his best. But, all right. Are you excited that Rodrigo Blankenship is back as the kicker of the Arizona Cardinals, Tony? How about that? Huh?
I'm excited because I like his glasses. As long as I can see those, you know what I mean? That's his signature part, you know?
So, listen, I want to start off by talking about some fantasy quarterbacks here. I mean, the quarterbacking, if I see another Denver Bronco or Chicago Bear game, would you believe the Bears are back on national TV again this weekend? But what's going on, in your opinion? The Monday night game, a perfect example, not just Denver, but the Chargers either. They seemed to me, Tony, in no danger of scoring a touchdown after the early touchdown by Eckler. What's going on with some of this quarterback?
I have no idea. Like, number one, I have no idea why Chicago is getting the primetime games. Like, I get why Denver was.
Yeah,
we
right.
know they were right, but Chicago, like, I don't know. I you know, I can't even pronounce our head coach Eberflus. You know, whatever. Like, you know, they're lost cause. But I was with you, man. I was sweating. I just need it. I'm sitting there with my son in that Chargers game, and we just need one touchdown by Herbert, just one. And I'm like, how am I sweating out a touchdown to Josh Herbert? Like, what is going on here, right? Justin Herbert. So I don't know, man. I said this before. These head coaches, they get cute. They get, they try. Joshua Kelly's in the game instead of Eckler. Like, what?
I know.
Just stick to what works. I don't understand.
And I guess the Chargers missed Keenan Allen a great deal. But overall, league-wise, Tony, 7 quarterbacks in the league through 6 weeks have double-digit touchdowns. I mean, I don't know, Tony. I don't think anybody's going to reach – well, Josh Allen's going to reach 40. I don't think anybody else is. You're a far cry away from a couple of years ago when Tom Brady was getting 53.
Yeah, you know what? I think a lot of this, too, I see the evolution of the Wildcat came into play a few years ago, and now you have these direct snaps to the fullback and the running back. You have these sweeps that Deebo Samuel made famous, right? So, I mean, a lot of these trickery goes into taking the ball away from these quarterbacks throwing the ball. And I'll tell you what, Pat, I haven't seen a lot of balls down the field. I haven't done the stats, but I'd be curious to see the difference from last year to this year with these long balls.
That's the other thing, too. And I have been concerned, maybe, I don't know if concerned is the right word, but the Eagles, to me, the one thing that's noticeably lacking from their game is down the field passing. Of course, as an A.J. Brown drafter, I'm looking for it, but I just don't see it. And I wonder, do you think it might be because, look at that Monday night game. The Chargers' offensive line was horrendous in that game. And same thing with Denver's. There just seems to be, except for Buffalo and Philadelphia, a noticeable lack of talent on these offensive lines.
And it really is. And we know as well as anybody that it's all about drafting right? These guys, there's been a lot recently, a lot of first and second round busts on offensive linemen, more than recent history. Used to be, man, if you're top 15 or top 20, you take that O-lineman, you're good for the next 10 years. Right. But there's been a lot of stiffs coming out that just have not produced. And the injuries, there's no depth. I mean, Pat, we're lucky. We go like 8-9 deep on the offensive line. Not every team can do that. You bring in these guys that haven't played and don't get any reps in practice. They're like human turnstiles.
Yeah. How about you last week? I guess when Alec Pierce caught that touchdown, you were that was it, man.
It saved my day. Like, I look forward to the Sunday when I get to tweet you and say, yo, here we go, right? Like, I'm always looking for that guy, always. And he came through the last minute.
You had Darrell Henderson. I don't know what the Rams are doing. Just run him. He's a big, tough. He's not big, but he's squat.
He scored.
Yeah, he scored. Just run him 20 times a game, for God's sake. Alec Pierce. I thought, oh, my God, where the hell did he come from?
Yeah.
But, all right, so tell me who you got this week. Who are you? Give me these one-offs, somebody that you're looking at maybe, especially with a bye week, some teams off, including Buffalo. People are going to be looking for some streaming players.
Yeah, listen, I'm going with a tiny Jacksonville love affair this weekend, right? I know they're playing New York at home, but I like Trevor Lawrence and I like crazily Evan Ingram. Listen, Doug falls in love with these tight ends. We saw it here in Philly. And listen, this guy's done nothing except get 16 targets in 2 games. So I really like Evan Ingram this week going against his former squad. And Raheem Mostert is just being undervalued in Miami. He's getting the clock. He's getting the touches. I think he has a good week. And I'm telling you, Pat, I know this guy's on a lot of radars. He's still not getting enough love to me. But Dameon Pierce, I'm telling you, I said in the beginning of the year, he will be on somebody's Super Bowl roster. Lovie Smith loves him, says he's going to keep pounding him at least 20 times a game. If you don't have Dameon Pierce in your lineup, or you should have him on your team. But if you're playing DFS, he needs to be a fixture because he could be the top running back this week.
Yeah, Pierce has been looking good for Houston. I want to see the Texans have a little bust out, too. I'm a Brandon Cooks owner, and I like to see him get going. I got to use him this week. I don't have Brown or my draft pick of the year, Allen Robinson, who, again, should have had 2 this past week, but they didn't call a face mask penalty. But if not for that face mask, he'd have had 2. But now I need Brandon Cooks to step up here. There's so many guys, Tony, as you and I have been talking about, who've just been – it just hasn't happened yet for them. Let me see. Guys like Cortland Sutton, as an example, with the Broncos. Amari Cooper's been okay, but a guy like Chris Godwin, Tyler Lockett. I mean, there's so many of these guys and big names that just have not yet hit their stride.
No, they really haven't. And some of it's quarterback play. Some of it's just the overall point of the offense. But and some of it's been injuries. But you never know. I mean, you guys, it's like all of a sudden Brandon Ayuk goes off for 2 touchdowns. I like Brandon Ayuk, but still, who would have thought, right? It's just it's a crazy year, and it's going to keep getting crazier.
Oh, you did mention Jimmy G too last week. I picked him up. He had 2 touchdowns.
He did. Listen, if he doesn't throw 2 picks in that game, he gives you 20+ points. So, I mean, I got to bring it over to the Win Daily DFS side, man. That's what we have to do. You no more of that. We'll get you every week.
Flintstone League. I know. I'll have to do it. I'm going to have to take you up on it. I'll do it. I'll do it next year, and I'm sure I'll run the table with all you guys. So
yeah, man. Let's go. We'll have some fun.
All right, well, where else does everybody find the jigsaw besides where I mentioned Win Daily, I mentioned Sirius? Where else are people tracking you down?
Yeah, right there. You see on the screen at Judge Jigsaw. You can follow me at Judge Jigsaw. Tony Jigsaw Cutillo Final Judgment. Go live like 3-4 shows a week. Really good time. Got a lot of we had over 1,000 viewers for the post game show the other night. It was great.
Very good.
So just follow at Judge Jigsaw. You'll see all my verdicts.
And will you do me a favor? Please get me a big week out of Lamar Jackson. I'm sick of seeing him at the top of every weekly fantasy list, and then he delivers a 1 touchdown, a 45-yard rush day performance. Let's go with the Ravens, huh?
Yeah, listen. We need breakout Lamar. We need to break out Lamar. It's coming. It's coming.
All right, pal. I appreciate it. I appreciate you hanging with me. We'll talk to you again next week. All right.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, bud.
All right. Tony Cutillo, the great Tony Cutillo Jigsaw, joining me from Win Daily Sports, Sirius XM. Give him a follow, please. Give me a follow at TWIPF Pat. And then I want you to give this guy coming up, the great Sean Green, will be joining me, strutting around now with the 6-0 Eagles. And we're going to talk some props. And we're going to talk about the Eagles going to be an underdog to anybody until January. We'll do that when we get back here on This Week in Pro Football.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go, Eagles.
UGI.
First Bank is a true community bank with offices located throughout eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Being a First Bank customer comes with access to personal bankers, ones who know you and your business almost as well as you do. Joe Calabro is a regional president of First Bank and has been a leader and a lender in the southeastern Pennsylvania market for over 30 years. Call their Westchester office 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at ugies.com. Where do you tailgate when your team's away? Join Judd's and Jackson's at Spring Mill for their first ever Birds Tailgate Party on Sunday, September 25th, starting at noon under the tent. Enjoy a full tailgate buffet from only $26.95 per person, along with specials at the bar. Celebrate with friends cheering on our hometown team. Judd's and Jackson's at Spring Mill Athletic Club. Visit juddsdining.com for more details.
Evolution Energy Partners has helped hundreds of businesses save millions of dollars on their energy spent. They offer electricity and gas procurement strategies, efficiency audits and engineering and financing solutions, as well as online utility bill management. To learn how your business can save, visit www.evolutionep.com or contact Chuck Herschella at 610-329-8288. Evolution Energy Partners, energy solutions to improve your bottom line.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
Welcome back this week in pro football. Pat Callahan joining you here on JAKIB Sports, the National Football League. I want to recommend this to everybody. Check out John Keim's story on ESPN.com. The Washington Commanders hosting the Green Bay Packers this week. He did a great little story on Vince Lombardi, who many people may not know was the coach of the then Redskins back in 1970 after he had retired from coaching and general manager as of the Green Bay Packers. And he turned that team right around. Some great stories in there about the 1 year that he had in Washington. And then he died at 57 from stomach cancer. So Vince Lombardi, who, of course, an indelible impact on the National Football League, much like this guy coming on here, the actual host of SGPN and the SGPN Sports Betting Podcast. That would be Sean Green. Sean, how you doing?
Doing great. Yeah, they call me the Vince Lombardi of podcasts. Let's go.
There you go. What the hell's going on with this podcast? I wanted to hit you with a couple things here, Sean, that I noticed.
Sure.
I get your take on these. The best teams against the spread so far this year, I'm sure you know this. Atlanta 6-0.
Yeah.
The Giants 5-1, Houston 4-1. Now, what do those 3 teams have in common, right? That no one thought they were any good at all.
Yeah, no one thought they were any good at all, and they're all catching points again this week. And I'm all on the I'm on the dog on all 3. I mean, it's interesting. You know, they're not adjusting to what we're seeing out on the field, and it's crazy that they continue to catch these big numbers.
I know. And look at the Giants. I mentioned earlier, I had Pat Leonard on from the New York Daily News. Giants 5-1 at 2-4 Jacksonville, and the Giants are catching 3 points. It is an odd thing. The other thing I wanted to get your take on was you had mentioned to me a couple of weeks ago. You guys do something called the referee report.
Yep.
Well, it's most notable this week with Vegas is hosting. Who was it? I think it's Houston, right? Am I right about that? I think it is.
Yep.
John Hussey is the referee in the game, and the Raiders are 0 for their last 6 with this guy. Would you attribute anything to that? Do you take note of that when you're looking at this game?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, you honestly see it a little bit more when it comes to in the NBA, as far as like personally not liking this guy. I mean, you saw it with Chris Paul. We've seen it through the years where it gets like personal and the ref really doesn't like that guy. The thing to watch in the NFL is there are definite refs who either lean towards the over or the under. It's great for totals. And then also home or away team. Like some of these refs, you put them in the home crowd environment and they do seem to be swayed a little bit more than normal. And then, you know, vice versa. They're stubborn. They're going on the road and they hate the fan base, and again, it's a couple penalties a game, but when, you know, the number's so close, it does add up. So yeah, definitely look at those splits.
I know, because those couple penalties a game that you mentioned could be a 48-yard pass interference penalty or a roughing the passer, like a spurious roughing the passer penalty, like we've seen the last few weeks that could alter a game perceptibly.
Yeah, I mean, pass interference obviously has a huge impact on the over, the under, and then offensive holding. Like if you have a ref who's calling offensive holding pretty tight, you're going to look good on the under, right? Because it's going to kill a bunch of drives. You're going to be facing second and 20s. Yeah, so definitely look at that.
There's no drive killer like the 1st and 10 holding penalty. You can almost write the drive off unless you're the Buffalo Bills, where it doesn't seemingly matter at all. You know. But all right, Sean, talk about the home team for a second here. I look at the Eagles' schedule, and as I've been saying all season long, it's an incredibly easy schedule. They happen to draw the AFC South this year, and the AFC South is an historically underperforming division. And of course, the NFC East itself, while stronger, you still get the Commanders twice a year. Do you see any team on the Eagles' schedule that they might even be even with or an underdog to over the rest of the year?
Yeah, I mean, and some of these books do have these look-ahead lines where you could bet on these games kind of, you know, on week 15, stuff like that. Right. You know, assuming the Eagles play continues at the level it is, they're going to be a favorite in all these games. You know, there were some spots like when you were, you know, the beginning of the season where you go, oh man, the Packers, that's going to be a tough game. Meanwhile, the Packers look really poor. And to the other side, the easy teams seem a little bit better, but I think they would still be favored. Like the Giants, for instance, they're 5-1. I think even in New York, the Eagles would still be a favorite right now. Yeah. Giants would really have to do something special. I mean, you know, when the Eagles, they do start losing a couple games, that certainly could change things. I mean, there are some sneaky road spots. Like the Eagles later on this season, they have 3 road games in a row. So that could be they could trip up there and maybe you get some line adjustment. But as of right now, if you had a look-ahead line, they'd be favored in every game.
Sean, I mentioned earlier in the show that there are some teams that have been really serious disappointments so far through week 6, and offenses in general seem to be in kind of a malaise. But most notably, teams like Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Los Angeles, 3 high-powered offensive teams that seemingly can't get themselves really on track and are averaging, teams like Green Bay 17.8 points a game, the Rams 17.3, even Dallas. Now, of course, they haven't had their starting quarterback, but even as well as Dallas has played 18 points a game. Is this going to be a season-long thing in your opinion?
No, I you know, you mentioned the Rams, Tampa Bay, and Green Bay. I think one thing they have in common is a veteran quarterback, right? So I think I wouldn't be surprised if some of these teams figure things out a little bit. I mean, with Aaron Rodgers, it's very easy. No Devontae Adams, still haven't figured out the receiver situation. For Tampa Bay, it's like, you know, Tom Brady dealing with some personal stuff. But for Tampa Bay, we saw this the year they won the Super Bowl. I mean, you remember where Brady was holding up like 3 fingers and it was like, no, dude, it's 4th down. You guys are done.
I remember. God, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they find some momentum. I mean, of those teams, I like Tampa Bay the best to figure it out because they have so much talent. And actually breaking down the film on Brady, he's still playing at a decently high level. The offense is a little out of sync, and I think not having Bruce Arians is hurting them. Dallas is still a wild card because of no Dak. We'll see how healthy he is. The Rams, I think, are going to be your Rams, Pat. I'm sorry. It's just they're too one-dimensional, and Stafford, man, you know, the injuries, I think, have caught up to him, and that long season, like, you know, it felt like everyone coming together for one final run. They got the Super Bowl.
They got it. Yeah, well, that's we both know it, right? Teams don't make a habit of repeating a Super Bowl champion. So, I mean, I'm not surprised at all. But all right, look, let's get to, before we get to any props you like for this week, let's do this pick segment here, which is sponsored by UGI, because I am going against you on 2 of these 3. Sean.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So let me give you the 2, because I know you're going to be the opposite, so we can get them right out of the way, which is, I've been talking about the Giants the whole damn show. I mean, well, I'm going with Jacksonville, but it's strictly a psychology play because I think the Giants are due for a clunker. Now, they just won an emotional game, comeback game against the Ravens at home. I think they're due for a game, maybe in a human environment. I don't like what I'm hearing. Saquon, bad shoulder. I think Jacksonville will get the ship righted here a little bit and will cover this number. You tell me why you disagree with me.
Yeah, so, well, one part of me is picking the Giants to hopefully just jinx my co-host Ryan, who was on the show last week. So there's a psychological element to that. I agree they could be primed for a letdown spot after that revenge game against the Ravens. I like taking the Giants in the points just because I don't think this is going to be a particularly pretty game. And Jacksonville continues to struggle as a favorite. Like, they're 12-25 ATS as a favorite dating back to 2008. Now, a lot of different teams in between there, but the Giants as a dog, I'm still going to take them.
All right. The other one where I think we disagree is I like Carolina double digits at home against Tampa Bay. Now, this one, you could use the reverse psychology and say one of these days the Buccaneers are going to right the ship. And if they do it against a team as disorganized as Carolina, they're going to post a big number. But I think Carolina plays hard every week, and 11's a big number. I can see Tampa Bay here winning this one 20-10 or something like 24-14. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm again, this is probably not one of my favorite plays, but I'm on the opposite side there. For me, Carolina, their chance to kind of show up was that game against the Rams. Like, hey, we got rid of our head coach, Matt Rule, who some of us didn't like. This is our get up game. And they had 3 offensive points. I think this is going to be a really tough spot. I mean, the Panthers are incredibly one-dimensional. PJ Walker, I mean, not to jump ahead to the props, but I love his under passing yards. I think it's just going to be I think it's going to be really tough for them to move the ball. And then you have a motivated Tom Brady on the other end. I don't think it's going to be a super high scoring game, but I just struggle to see how Carolina gets enough points to cover even 11.
I don't know why you think that's not going to work. I mean, PJ Walker, just because he threw 85% of his passes went actually behind the line of scrimmage. I don't know if you're trying to make
Pat, we talked about this on our show. He had a negative average depth of target, which means when you're throwing the football, the entire average, it was behind the line of scrimmage.
It killed me because I had in fantasy, I had the Rams defense, and I'm thinking, okay, this is a lick your chops day. He couldn't get anywhere near him because he wasn't even looking downfield.
Yeah,
and he's throwing the ball like 3.5 to 4 yards to Christian McCaffrey. You couldn't possibly pick one off. That was a long day.
No, and and they didn't get any points, but it was just like dink and dunk stuff.
Oh God,
he's not going to get sacked.
What the hell am I picking him for? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. Oh yeah, JC. Pat, what you have going for you is JC Horn, the young cornerback for the Panthers. He's really good, so maybe he can help slow them down a little bit. But I think Godwin, unfortunately, has a big game.
The last game, Sean, that I have is I'm sorry, I've been dragging the Bears through the mud all show. The fact that they're on national TV again against New England, I think New England here is way better than a 7.5 or an 8-point number. I like the Patriots at home against the Bears.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm on the Pats as well. I think it's really what it is the Patriots, they run the ball very well. Like, right. That's kind of how they're making it easy for Bailey Zappi, and the Bears, they're 28th in rush DVOA. And Justin Fields just not seeing much.
No.
Justin Fields and Bill Belichick dominates rookie quarterbacks. Now, Fields isn't technically a rookie, but he's so raw right now. He's kind of playing like a rookie. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
I mean, that Thursday night game, the Bears, who the hell were they playing, Sean? But the
Commanders.
Oh, the Commanders. Oh my God. What genius in the NFL thought that was a good idea.
Carson Wentz throws for 99 yards.
And wins the game. Player of the game. And Fields missed that kid in the end zone, like wide open, like a 10-yard pass at most. He overthrows him by 5 yards.
Just a little touch. He does.
Yeah, a little touch. Yeah. So I don't. Yeah. So anyway, that was my game. Do you have a third game that you really like besides New England?
Yeah. So I really like New England. I mean, I'll give you another one. There's a couple I like. Well, we talked about the Texans. I am on the Texans +7. You know, since 2020, underdogs are 9-4 against the spread coming off the bye. It's actually, the bye has kind of changed since 2020. So teams coming off the bye, if they're favored, actually haven't done very well. It's this weird thing with the collective bargaining agreement where they can't practice like they normally have. So there's value in the dogs, and you should actually be fading the favorites. So I'm going to take the Texans +7. And then also on that, I'm going to take the Colts +2.5. Again, I don't like Matt Ryan at all. This is a little nerve-wracking, but Colts just show up in Tennessee. They've won 8 out of the last 10 in Tennessee. And again, you're fading favorites coming off the bye. Since 2020, they're 14-24 against the spread.
Tennessee is such an enigma. You just don't know week to week what they're going to do. I mean, some weeks they look very powerful in the mold of their coach, a big, brooding team that just wears you the hell down. Other weeks they look like they don't even know why they're there. So it'll be interesting to see. You're right, though. Indy does fight every week. I'll be interesting to see if Matt Ryan can last the whole year. Boy, he's getting blasted, Sean. But
he's taking a ton of shots.
You already gave me one prop. Just give me one more here before I let you go.
So, yeah, like I said, under on P.J. Walker. And then I'm going to say Robert Tonyan, the tight end for the Green Bay Packers, him to score a touchdown. I like it at +350. He's coming off his biggest game with the Packers. I think he's one of the few guys that Aaron Rodgers trusts. He's coming off a 10-catch game. Hasn't gotten that touchdown yet. I think this is a good spot for him against the Commanders. So, yeah, give me Robert Tonyan.
I wonder, Sean, now that you mention it, I'm the host of this show. I could change my mind if I want. There's nothing you could do about it. Now, you like Washington, though, +5, but this could be a game I wonder if Green Bay doesn't right the ship a little bit. I mean, it's just hard to fathom the Packers are going to keep playing like this over an extended period of time.
Yeah, this game was one of the harder ones to handicap. I took the home dog with the idea that they'll hang around a little bit. I think this actually, if you're a totals person, I would lean over on this. And I think Washington will be able to score enough to kind of hang around. But you're right. It could be an Aaron Rodgers get-right game, and they completely blow them out. I just like the fact that of his receivers, he clearly trusts Tonyan, and it seems like there's a lot of issues with the rest of the guys.
All right. And I tell you, Taylor Heineke, he impressed me as a backup quarterback when he played a number of games last year. I thought he was pretty good. So I don't know if there'll be a big fall-off on the Commander side, assuming they can stay focused with their coach making dumb comments and their owner is in danger of getting thrown out. Yeah. I don't know. That franchise is that needs a complete overhaul, that franchise. But all right, Sean, I kept you over as I always do. I appreciate you taking the time. Please, everybody, check out the podcast. Anything in particular you're working on podcast-wise or anything you want to plug here?
Yeah, just Google Sports Gambling Podcast. Can't miss it. And thanks for having me, Pat.
All right, Sean. Thanks very much, Pat. I look forward to talking to you next week. All right. As usual, I'm rumbling on here and taking too much time. But a lot of interesting things to talk about here in the NFL, and not least of which is my next guest, of course, be the great Gary Myers, also from the New York Daily News and the Dallas Morning News, and the prolific NFL author. Gary's going to join me. We're going to talk. We're going to go around the league here in the NFL when we get back on This Week in Pro Football.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at UGIES.com.
First Bank is a true community bank with offices located throughout eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Being a First Bank customer comes with access to personal bankers, ones who know you and your business almost as well as you do. Joe Calabro is a regional president at First Bank and has been a leader and a lender in the southeastern Pennsylvania market for over 30 years. Call their Westchester office, 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC.
It was late at night. I was browsing KennedyAuto.com when there was a knock at my door.
Hey, baby, what you doing?
Buying a car from John Kennedy Ford.
Online?
I let her in on the secret. KennedyAuto.com makes car buying easy. That got her attention.
Can I go for a ride?
Let me get my coat. KennedyAuto.com. Enjoy your ride.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
UGI.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
Welcome back this week in pro football here. Wrapping up our final segment. By the way, Sean Green was presented by the great folks at UGI, and I forgot to mention Tony Cutillo was presented by the great folks at Concrete Cutting Systems. Appreciate that very much. This gentleman here is presented by the great folks at M&T Bank, and that would be the NFL author and the longtime correspondent with the New York Daily News and Dallas Morning News. That would be Gary Myers. Gary, how you doing?
It's good to see you, Pat. How are you?
All right. I had a colleague of yours on earlier in the show, Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News was on, and he spoke very highly of one Gary Myers. And
Philadelphia guy.
I know. That's right. We were talking about that too. But you can't ignore those football giants at 5-1, nor those Jets. How about the Jets, Gary, going into Green Bay and knocking off the Packers to get to 4-2?
It's so typical of the Jets that they finally have a little something going, and Elijah Moore, one of their best young players, asked for a trade.
I know.
Because he hasn't seen the ball enough. I mean, he didn't get any targets last week.
I know.
In Green Bay. The Jets have just a dynamic young group of receivers with like Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore. And the issue really is, getting Zach Wilson up to speed. He missed the first few games. He's still learning. He's just in his second year. And the Jets are really running the ball very well. So they got a little prosperity going. And you know what they say about those teams like the Jets, they can't stand prosperity. So
you're speaking like a very jaded New Yorker right now, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But we'll see if it keeps up, though. I think it's great, as we talked about. It's good for New York football. But let me ask you.
It's been fun to watch them because they have as many good young players as any team in the league. I'm not saying their roster is as good as any team in the league, but just as far as first, second, and third year guys, they have a great group.
Well, I always say that, though, about Gary, and the Jets are a good example. Teams are just consistently drafting in the top 5, top 7, whatever. They've got to eventually get it right. I mean, the NFL, the league is very, very, like egalitarian in that way. They reward failure. You keep picking bad, keep picking great spots in a draft because your team is so bad. You're supposed to get good. Looks like the Jets are finally doing it.
Yeah, but also when you have the 3rd pick in the draft and you take Sam Darnold,
right?
And nobody was criticizing that pick when it happened, but now you look, 4 or 5 years later, and the Jets passed on Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Whether he would have had the same success with the Jets as he's having in Buffalo, that's always so hard to predict. But
I don't know, but boy, he is something. He's got MVP almost locked up already. Allen does. But now, let's talk about quarterbacks, Gary, because as usual, my glass half empty self here, I'm going to concentrate on the quarterbacks that are not performing well, as opposed to those like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts that are. But give me your take on guys like Aaron Rodgers. Who else am I thinking of here? Aaron Rodgers, most notable. Even Tom Brady.
Matthew Stafford is
Matt Stafford's a great example. Russell Wilson, it might be the picture poster child for this. Why are they so badly underperforming so far this year?
Well, with Aaron Rodgers, I would say a lot of it, Pat, has to do with he doesn't have Devontae Adams anymore. And he doesn't have a receiver that you really have to worry about.
Right.
And, he's got a bunch of young guys that he's trying to bring along at the same time as he's trying to win football games. And that's a really hard thing to do when Randall Cobb, is one of your main threats. And, a few years ago, it seemed like he was on his way out of the league. They're kind of hurting at receiver right now. But it also, in watching Rodgers the last couple of weeks play against the Giants and Jets, he, to me, just doesn't look like the same player. Again, it could be because of his weapons. It could be because he's, 38 years old now or something like that.
Right.
And not everybody is going to be Tom Brady. They all want to be Tom Brady and still be great in their late 30s and early 40s, but it's not going to work that way. Russell Wilson is just a mystery.
Yeah.
I've had people telling me, this is how he looked in Seattle last year for huge stretches. But he just looks incompetent right now.
Yeah, he really does. He started off a hell in the Monday night game. They hit a TD pass in the midway through the first quarter. Denver looks like maybe they're getting back on their skates again. And then for the rest of the game, they couldn't get anything accomplished offensively.
So maybe Nathaniel Hackett knew what he was going for an 85-yard field goal rather than
that's true. That's true. All right, but now as a segue to that, we mentioned the quarterbacks. Now the teams. Tell me, out of the notably underperforming teams, which are really associated with the exact same guys we just mentioned, which one do you think maybe rights the ship first here?
I don't think it's going to be Green Bay. I see their struggles continuing. The Rams, other than Cooper Kupp, who does Stafford have to throw the ball to? Which is why I think when he's healthy, that Odell Beckham is still a perfect fit for the Rams because they need him and he wants to be there. It's just they have to offer him the right contract.
Yeah.
Let's see what other teams we got.
Well, the other teams are obviously Green Bay, Denver, even San Francisco sits at 3-3. I think the 49ers are clearly the best team in the NFC West, and yet they go into Atlanta and lose to the Falcons.
Yeah, but they had a bunch of injuries on the defensive line last week. So I would, anytime you're missing Nick Bosa, who's such a dynamic player, it's going to severely affect your ability to get to the quarterback. And I think they had a couple other injuries as well. The team we haven't talked about yet are the Bucs, and the struggles that they're having. They're averaging 10 points less a game this year than they were last year, and Tom Brady just doesn't. He doesn't look as committed to me.
He doesn't either. I agree with you.
His actions on the field, off the field, very strange. And I know he said today, or he said on Thursday, that retirement is not in his future. Well, I don't know if that means he's not going to retire during the season. Some people
retirement next week is not in his future. But you're right. I think you're right about that. And you said it about Rodgers a minute ago. I think these are guys who maybe are, I don't know if they're regretting sticking around or if they're just not used to losing, Gary, and they're not handling it very well. But these are two guys that really, I think that not just that their teams, Gary, but I think the league is looking for them to step it up here because they're two marquee guys.
Yeah, and I think the problem in Tampa is that, there's a big turnover in the offensive line to begin with, and now they've had a bunch of injuries, and they've been without their center, Ryan Jensen, who held that line together. And then they've had a bunch of injuries at wide receiver. So it's not so much that Brady has taken a step backwards, like I think Aaron Rodgers has taken a step backwards, and certainly Russell Wilson has taken a step backwards. I think the pieces around Brady at this point are not what he's used to.
Yeah.
And I would put most of the, not the blame, but the reason is the offensive line. I mean, you got to protect this guy. He's 45 years old.
Right.
And that's just not happening. And you saw the frustration last week, him yelling at the offensive line.
I know. But of course, when Tom Brady yells, you got to listen. You have no choice but to listen. Don't say a word either, I guess, or you'll be an ex-Buccaneer. But listen, Gary, let me ask you this too. Now, this is, I don't know, you might think I'm reaching, but I just noticed it. I noticed it when Buffalo has a 4th and 3 at the 3-yard line of Kansas City in a game that you know is going to end up a 1-score game. And they eschew the field goal, and again, they go for it. And I'm noticing this more and more, that teams are not opting for field goals. Only 7 of the league's 32 teams are averaging 2 field goals a game. Do you think, Gary, that are analytics rendering field goals obsolete to the point now where teams are immediately going to think they're going to go for it unless they actually decide to go against the grain and kick the field goal?
Well, I think in the case of Sean McDermott going for the not taking the field goal last week, he knew that was going to be a high-scoring game, and 3 points wasn't going to win it. So I didn't really have a problem with that. It's guys like Brandon Staley who have decided they actually invented football. And I mean, some of the stuff that guy does is it's going to get him fired at some point.
Yeah.
When he makes a crucial decision, like he did last year in the Raiders game, the last game of the year, he goes for it, like, was it 4th and 3 on his own 17 in the third quarter?
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I hate analytics in baseball. I hate what it's done to baseball. I don't like it. It's been slower to be adopted into football, but it's certainly having an impact, the last, definitely this season and last year as well, where you keep seeing these stats. If you go for it and make it, what your chances of winning the game are versus kicking a field goal or punting. And it's like a 1 or 2% difference. Yeah. And why they're taking the risky approach, because if you miss it, then you put yourself in such a precarious position.
I remember the old Herm Edwards line that no drive is bad when it ends with a kick. And I just think that to specifically talk about what you were saying, that game ended up not a high-scoring game, 24-20, I think it ended up. Buffalo wins. And when you're playing Kansas City and you know it's going to be a 1-score game, see, I would take the 3. I'd take the 3 there, put them in the bank, and just know now that I only have 4 to make up if I have the wrong decision, as opposed to 7 because they didn't get it. But still, that's 2020, obviously. But it's just notable to me, Gary, that teams are
but Pat, here's the difference. Those kind of decisions have been made forever.
Yeah,
it's the decisions of not going for a 40-yard field goal, but going for it on 4th and 5.
Exactly,
That's
Gary. Exactly right. You're right. But that, too, is contributing to why there's so fewer field goals being kicked. Those teams now have a 4th and 3 at the other team's 31-yard line. They're going for it as opposed to kicking the field goal. And I just think it's notable because these guys can make field goals from anywhere these days.
I say 16 in is the range now of almost any kicker. It's unbelievable.
I know. Listen, Gary, one other thing I wanted to ask you was the owners' meetings for this week.
Yeah.
And I was struck by the fact there was apparently a spirited discussion. How about that? Between Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, and who I think he's chairman of that compensation committee.
Yeah.
And one Jerry Jones, you may know, is the owner of the Dallas Cowboys.
I didn't know him. Yeah.
Who's had it in for Roger ever since the Zeke Elliott.
Right. That's exactly right.
And with a 31-1 vote to reopen the discussion on his contract. Here's what I want to ask you, though. Is it Goodell is already making north of $40 million a year? What is the impetus to pay this guy more?
Well, in the most recent contract that Roger has, Jerry got his point across, and it's a low base salary with incentives.
Okay.
Now, he hit a ton of incentives by getting a new CBA and new television contracts.
Right.
Jerry is complaining, basically, they're all likely to be earned instead of unlikely to be earned incentives. And he wants to make the bar higher, make the standard higher, to make them really put money in these owners' pockets before they put money in his pocket. Right. And I read something that Rodgers made $128 million over the last 2 years.
Well, with inflation being what it is, that's not what it used to be, Gary.
Yeah, I think we can both get by on that, though.
Yeah.
I mean, he's made these guys. He's made multi-millionaires into multi-billionaires.
Right.
And obviously, 31 out of the 32 want to reward him for that. I think all Jerry is really saying is, if we're going to pay him, let's at least make these incentives a little more difficult to reach before we pay this guy as much as a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think it's notable that
I would have loved to have been in the room for that one.
I agree with you. That would have been interesting to be there for that little dialogue between those two guys, two headstrong guys.
Not to mention whatever conversation there might have been about Daniel Snyder.
Gary, it's not one last thing before I let you go here. It's not a great slate of games again this week, but let me hit you with a couple of games that I think are somewhat notable, and you tell me what you think. Kansas City goes to San Francisco. Hard to bet against Andy Reid coming off a loss. But again, those 49ers are one of those teams that at any time can start playing really quality football. How do you see this game?
Yeah, the 49ers are one of those teams, if they're healthy, they're always going to play well because they play really good defense and they can run the ball. It doesn't matter who the running back is in the Shanahan offense. He got that from his father, that you stick anybody back there, they're going to get 4.5 yards a carry.
Right.
So it's a question to me of how healthy are the 49ers this week. Kansas City has better personnel, but if the San Francisco defense is healthy and they can run the ball on Kansas City, then that'll at least be guaranteed it'll be a pretty close game. I wouldn't be surprised if the Niners won this game, but I really want to check on what's going on with their defensive line for this weekend.
All right. And then the other game, would you believe, I told you it's not a great slate, but a game that is interesting to me, the Jets are in Denver. Now, this is not going to be, no one's going to preempt the Sunday nighter to put Jets-Denver on. Everybody's had enough of the Broncos. But this is a real chance for the Jets to get to 5-2 and actually be thought of in the company of Buffalo. Are they going to do it?
Well, it's interesting is after this game, they play the Patriots and the Bills back-to-back at home.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine, taking it one step at a time, assuming they beat Denver, what the crowd will be like.
That's
that New England game. Jet fans just hate the Patriots.
Yeah.
And they hate Belichick. So that'll be pretty wild. But, yeah, I think this will be a low-scoring game because Denver, still does play pretty good defense. And the Jets are getting better on defense. Their offense still is very much, a work in progress. So I don't think the Jets are going to score a lot. We know Denver's not going to score a lot because I'm not sure how much they would score if it was 11-on-3, the way Russell Wilson is playing. I mean,
I know, but the AFC East all of a sudden, Gary, is looking like a decent division. There's not a team with a losing record in it, and with New England playing Chicago, Miami hosting Pittsburgh, and the Jets with a very winnable game against Denver. It would be great to see every one of them with a winning record next week when Buffalo comes off its bye.
Yeah, I mean, the AFC East and the NFC East. The NFC East having a little bit of a rebirth here. We'll see how long that lasts.
I know.
But, for now, it's not bringing up memories of
Parcells,
Landry and Gibbs and Parcells and Buddy Ryan, but it is kind of fun that the division has kind of made a turnaround, other than Washington, of course.
Yeah, well, forget it. Well, we'll have to spend some time in a future show talking about the Washington Commanders or whatever their name is this week and how dysfunctional. I'll have to get that from you as maybe a list of what you regard as the most dysfunctional franchises in the NFL.
We better have that Washington conversation quickly in case they throw Daniel Snyder out of the league.
That's right. That's right. A very subtle message there by Jim Irsay there.
Yeah, really subtle.
So, yeah. Listen, Gary, thanks for taking all this time. It's always great having you on and talking to you. And I can't wait for that new book to come out, and you'll keep us in touch with that. And I look forward to talking to you next week. All right.
Great. Thanks, Pat.
All right. Great Gary Myers joining me to wrap up this edition of This Week in Pro Football. Don't forget my trivia question is out there. Please give me a follow. I'd like to get to 3 or 4 million followers by the weekend if I could, at TWIPF Pat or at JAKIB Sports. You want to follow the network. My question is just to name me which NFL team has gotten the most Associated Press MVP awards. Come on, it's pretty simple. Just send me that tweet. You get a This Week in Pro Football t-shirt. Thanks to Xander for producing. Thanks to everybody who Join me today, my usual roster, and we'll look forward to the Week 7 games. We'll talk to you next week on This Week in Pro Football.
I grew up in a home, and I wanted my kids to have that. The process of buying a home seemed so daunting, but Christine and M&T believed in me. Everyone took an interest and helped me through the process. You don't get this kind of service everywhere. I closed on the house and I didn't tell the kids. They were like, oh, you got the key? You closed on the home? They were so happy. M&T Bank made this dream come true for me and my girls.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at UGIES.com.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
UGI
First Bank is a true community bank with offices located throughout eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Being a First Bank customer comes with access to personal bankers, ones who know you and your business almost as well as you do. Joe Calabro is a regional president of First Bank and has been a leader and a lender in the southeastern Pennsylvania market for over 30 years. Call their Westchester office, 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC.